and welcome to the Business Magazine for Women.com's podcast. Our podcast is focused on promoting women's voices in business, technology, STEM, sports, and culture. My name is Monica Antohi, and I'm the host and the founder for the Business Magazine for Women.com. In today's podcast, we're talking about the financial education of girls, and specifically of girls and women of color, and why there's such a difference between what we're all being taught. We'll be talking about financial literacy and empowerment and wealth building and all big topics for any girl and woman to master, obviously. To help us discuss all of these issues and probably a little bit more and how to better deal with finances as a woman, I've invited Ms. Chloe McKenzie of BlackFemInc. And we'll try to ask all the right questions, and we're going to try to get you all the right answers for the following questions. So here we go. Hi, Chloe, and welcome to the show.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Let's start by, first of all, introducing you to the audience. They presume they don't know anything about you, even though there's going to be a lot of information at the bottom of the podcast about you and the company and all that stuff, but presume they don't know anything. So let's give them a bit of an overview on who is Chloe McKenzie.
Absolutely. So I'm Chloe McKenzie. I grew up in Maryland, which is a really unique space, and I think actually kind of helps me think about why I decided to go into finance, just because the demographic I grew up around, Black people actually had the wealth and most of the power in the community I grew up in. And then I went to Amherst College, where I studied law and German. And after I graduated college, I then became a securitized products trader. Most people know securitized product trader because these people blew up our economy in 2008, trading mortgages. And so that was a very enlightening experience to be able to trade mortgages post-crisis. And after that, pursued an education fellowship where I worked in a inner city charter school in New York City. And kind of throughout all of that process, I had seeds that were planted in my mind of how I could start bridging or marrying the financial world with the education world. And that's where I came up with the idea of BlackFemInc, and kind of things have blossomed much faster than I thought, which no complaints there, but things have blossomed just because I've taken the things that I've learned from the financial world and things that I've learned from the education world and put them together.
All right, awesome. So we've talked about a little bit of BlackFemInc. How did that come about, and what exactly is it?
Absolutely. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit that has a mission to provide permanent access and opportunities to women and girls of color to build and sustain wealth. So when I was at JP Morgan as a trader, I also became a financial counselor for a few homeless families. And that was very profound to me. So one thing that I went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And I really got to understand why doing service was so important to me. And so doing service was something that, I did in college and then wanted to do once I entered the workforce. And recognizing that for some people, being a financial counselor at JP Morgan was just a way for them to get promoted, to be honest with you. So I'd watch these other people interact with some wealthy people who would come in with their tailored suits and things like that, and really not be able to make financial principles and planning accessible to these people, even on a social level. And so I think that's actually where I started to think of the idea, wow, I actually feel like I could do this better. I could make accessibility to wealth building and financial planning something that people want and not feel afraid of, but build confidence through empowerment. And then from there, as I mentioned, I worked in a charter school where I really understood that in poorer communities of color, accessibility to curriculum is actually one of the biggest obstacles that teachers face. Mm-hmm. So understanding that we have to make curriculum accessible, not just for the kid, but also for the parents and everybody else who's in the family at home.
In the community.
And so Exactly. So I found it really profound to be able to work on how I can refine myself as, yes, I could teach all of these great things, but am I making it accessible enough so that it resonates with the person that I'm teaching? So really understanding who you are as a vehicle when you are teaching or consulting with somebody. And so BlackFem came about when I kind of just had an inkling to myself, you know what, you're ready. You have done all of this work. Yeah, right.
That's awesome.
I was trading student loans. I was trading mortgages. I was trading credit card receivables. And I said to myself, it's very weird to me that, JP Morgan could make millions of dollars off of somebody's inability to pay, let's say, a $700 mortgage in middle of Nowheresville, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And just thinking to myself, wow, I wonder what it would look like if this person actually knew what we were doing with kind of their loan agreements and their securities interest they have in this property, like I said, in Nowheresville, Iowa. And so from there, when I started to develop curriculum, because I started having the practice of generating curriculum for teaching, I then said to myself, you know what, you're ready. And so I, on a whim, was at home and just decided to look at what incorporating would look like and talked to some colleagues of mine. And it kind of just happened in a way. But I do think that, like I said, there were seeds planted throughout the last few years that, allowed me to feel empowered enough to even start saying, you know what, our communities need this and they need this right now.
To me, it sounds like you've been primed for this your entire life. You've kind of gotten to the point you're at right now because of your childhood, because of your education, because of your interaction with work, because of basically seeing what's happening every day. So to me, it seems like you're a product of all of that, and BlackFemInc is a product of all of that. But I want to talk a little bit more about BlackFemInc and exactly
Sure.
what you're doing. So we figure out why you've chosen to teach financial terms and knowledge and all that stuff. And do you want to delve a little bit more deeper into that? And can we touch upon the lack of education for girls specifically on finances?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started BlackFemInc, the way that I like to kind of operate my business is thinking up with a whole bunch of different hypotheses about what the community needs. And then I will let my workshops and my interactions with families in these communities be the definitive conclusions that I need to know if it's working or not. And so what I first did is I wanted to know cold, hard statistics about what wealth outlooks were like in communities of color. And I think we all kind of could really just guess what it was. Of course, white men are at the top in terms of median wealth. Surprisingly enough, black men actually fall next.
Yeah, not surprising.
Right, exactly. Some people are surprised by it, some people aren't. But of course, when you're kind of dealing with the intersectionality between race and gender's going to win oftentimes. And so then white women and then women of color. So, of course, the U.S. government didn't do any statistics on the Asian demographic at all, but I'm sure, again, we can kind of think about where they would fall. And so I said to myself, okay, I know we're going to target women and girls of color, namely because we all know at the end of the day, they're at the bottom of the totem pole in every aspect of our society.
Absolutely.
So socially, economically, politically, we're always at the bottom. And so that
and access to education as well.
Exactly. So the truth in that is that we're undereducated, even though, we're going to college more often, but that actually means that we have more student loans. So that burden and enslavement that you have with debt is holding us back from being able to actually enter into this financial system that frankly was not built for us.
Of wealth generation and of wealth development and not worrying about bills every day. Yeah.
Exactly. And so knowing that, we just started to develop curriculum where it wasn't just about money management. So for me, the issues that I have with other financial literacy firms or organizations, I think they're great, but they focus really on getting rich. And for me, it's about the rich versus wealth distinction. Being wealthy is where we get our freedom. Being wealthy is where we have opportunities, and we can provide opportunities and privilege, really, to generations that come after us. And that's something that women of color just systematically do not have access to even build it. And so our whole point is we want them to build it, and then we want them to sustain it. And so that's where our curriculum comes in, is where we can not just teach them, okay, being rich, again, it's just whatever income you're bringing in. That can be lost if you lose your job. That can be lost if, some of your assets go away. But wealth itself is how long you can sustain, basically, and be okay, sustain yourself without even having to go to work. And that's what we want to provide to these women and girls of color, because that's true freedom, that's opportunity. And so, again, we are different not only because we focus on being wealthy instead of being rich, but we also focus on making sure our curriculum is accessible. And so a good example of that is we worked with a cheerleading squad here in Harlem for a lot of lower income girls, and we taught them how to trade stocks through cheerleading. So instead of going in with all these financial jargon and that they wouldn't understand, how can we make this accessible? Well, actually, we could say, okay, your IPO, you're just going to do a cheer, but you're not allowed to use your arms or your legs. You can't do anything. It's just going to be how eloquently you can say this cheer, and then we'll let somebody invest in you. Okay, maybe they're going to think about how cute you are. Like maybe they're going to, I know that girl's a tumbler, so they're going to invest in you. So that's your IPO. And then they'll use that money that they got from their IPO to make their product better. And so one of the big market movers for stock prices is your profit. So really, we just got to make them have a profit. So then they got to buy arm motions. They got to buy leg motions. They got to buy music and pom-poms and listen to market sentiment about what is going to be something that people want in the market. Okay, well, people really like pom-poms. Okay, great. So maybe they'll invest more money in getting the top level pom-poms. And so then they had another performance, which was kind of analogous to how the stock would perform in the market. And then they understood, okay, I see the risk here, but I'm going to do all of this, not knowing really if this is going to make me build a profit, and then calculating their profit and loss from there. So that really resonated with them. These girls love to cheer. So why not teach them some financial literacy through cheering? Because we know that it's going to resonate with them.
You're going to teach them financial literacy based on what they know and what they understand.
Exactly. And the one thing that I will always say to my girls, and it almost makes them angry every time I say it, is that finance is personal. So if you know who you are, then you actually know who you are as an investor. And that actually brings a lot of comfort and confidence to these girls and even their moms as well. Because if you understand, okay, I know that I'm always going to go buy the new iPhone. Well, okay, maybe instead of using my money for that on a $600 phone, I'll actually take that $600 and invest in Apple itself, because I can then project, I know all my friends are going to get the Apple iPhone, so it's likely that their profits are going to go up. If their profits go up, it's likely their stock price is going to go up. So that's how I think about it. Like, follow your own money. You are intuitively smart enough to be a great investor. It's just, again, creating a curriculum and then the opportunity to start building wealth.
That's phenomenal the way you've just presented that. But I think you can do, you guys have done an even better job at like the lower grades, like first grade through kindergarten for the first grade 3, I think. Mm-hmm. You sent me a video that a girl, 11-year-old girl, put together about financial literacy.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about that, and I'll have that included at the bottom of the podcast today, but we really need to talk about that because that was spectacular.
Absolutely. So something that we're doing now, and they come out every couple of weeks, I just get some of my girls that come through my program. So our 3rd to 8th grade program is called Time is Money. And we meet pretty frequently throughout the year. Sure.
Let's start with the beginning. The lowest grade program.
All the way.
Let's start at the beginning.
All right. So we have Money Does Grow on Trees.
I love that name, by the way.
Thank you. Which is our pre-K to 2nd grade program. And so I was asked by a nonprofit in DC called Artworks Now. They're a great arts nonprofit. And they said, we've got to get you in and do a financial literacy workshop. And I said, okay, great. Just tell me a little bit about the people that will serve. And they said, well, one caveat, they're going to be as young as 4. And so we hadn't generated curriculum yet that really could target 4-year-olds. So I said to myself, the big thing about our curriculum, again, is not only is it accessible, but I refuse to write curriculum that is dumbed down. So I am going to allow my 4-year-olds to work with $100,000. I'm going to allow my 6-year-olds to work with rent that's $2,000. So, and keep using the same financial terms. So we decided that we would use, what do you learn in kindergarten? Kindergartners and pre-K students, they don't know how to read and they don't know how to write.
Correct.
So what do you do to make it accessible to them? Okay, well, what do you learn in preschool and kindergarten? And not to, oversimplify, but you learn about gardening. That's one of the things that you learn about. And so we said, okay, let's take this analogy of how an apple would grow on trees and equate that to how money grows in your savings account through compound interest. And so we ended up creating a workshop where kids will get to pluck real dollar bills off of trees, so long as they plant the seed, which is their initial deposit, their initial investment. Well, they literally dig into the tree and they put a real $10 bill. And then each tree would represent a different bank, and each bank has a different interest, or exactly a different interest formula. And they would pluck $1, and if they chose to reinvest it, they'd bury it back in the tree. And then the next year they got to pluck 2 and then 4, understanding that it multiplies without even knowing what multiplication is. And so I said, okay, we need to ground this in something, because some 5-year-old's going to go home and say, Mommy, all I did was like pluck money off trees today. So my co-teacher and I, Sarah Vestoko, we wrote a children's book called Money Does Grow on Trees, which again follows this brilliant protagonist, Kyra, who really wants all of these material items, but her mom can't afford it. And her mom, instead of giving her what she wants, tells her, wow, well, what if we explore some of these financial tools that actually allow your money to grow without you having to do anything? So that is where kind of our very, very youngest programs have come from. And it's been incredibly successful because, again, we have this incredibly engaging and accessible curriculum, but then we also make it look like what they would learn in kindergarten. Okay, I know how to garden. These kids know how apples grow on trees or how carrots grow and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
the other fantastic thing about it is that you've taken a saying that's really just so wrong in so many ways, that
yes,
money does not grow on trees, and you're reteaching that
mm-hmm.
the proper way. And for that alone, bravo, seriously. It's such a horrible saying, money does not grow on trees. Yes, there's a really good thing, and there's a really good lesson in there. Yes, hard work and all that stuff, absolutely. But to tell a child that money doesn't grow in trees and money's hard to get by and all that stuff, it's not really the best financial advice you can give to a kid.
Absolutely.
Tell them hard work is important, and tell them that's how you're going to get anywhere, absolutely, with hard work. But don't tell them that it's that impossible. Don't sever all the good seeds in there, basically. Don't just destroy all that.
You can empower them to think about how these things work. And by starting with compound interest at such a young level, compound interest is also one of the most compelling reasons why people invest in the market in the first place. So by starting off by saying, wow, my money can just grow without really I could go to sleep and my money would grow. So that's what a lot of financial planners say, is you want to develop something where your money will grow while you're asleep. And so thinking about that idea can carry through all of our programs, because then when we teach some of our older kids how to start investing, they are already aware that compound interest is one of those super compelling mathematical and financial tools that gets them the money that they need, and then from there helps them build and sustain the wealth.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait to see this book when you guys are done with it. I'm super excited. But that's pre-K to second grade, correct?
Yes.
What's your next step?
The next step is our Time is Money program. So that is for 3rd to 8th graders. And this is where things really get fun. So we started off this summer with piloting this program, where we had a number of 3rd to 8th graders come in, and they're learning for 3 hours a day for 5 days a week. So in reality, if you're thinking about it, it's just 15 hours that we're really kind of bringing all of these new financial concepts to them. But it ranges from everything from understanding the difference between a credit card and a debit card, what's on your credit report, to how do you look at a financial aid package and then start at planning for your education right now. So if I'm 10 years old, I have 8 years before I may need to pay an expected family contribution. So how can I start saving? And is that a viable option for me? And what the girls actually found out is, like, if I save $20 a month from here until when I'm 18, I actually would be able to cover a couple $1,000s worth of an expected family contribution if I don't get all the loans that I need, or if I don't get all of the grants or scholarships that I need. So that was, again, another empowering moment that, yes, college is expensive, but if you plan correctly, that you can get there. And we end up finishing with something called a performance assessment, which is our way to quantify whether they're getting financially literate. And the girls loved this because they got to be the bankers. So I came in as this disheveled woman who needed a $10,000 loan, And they looked at my credit report. They looked at my assets. And so some of them would say, oh, okay, well, I see Miss so-and-so, I made up a name, that, you've had 2 delinquencies, according to your credit report, and your FICO is a 580. That's below average. They would then tell me if I got the full loan amount. They would set my interest rate and tell me why. One girl even went as far to give me a variable interest rate because I was one of her least trustworthy borrowers. I mean, it was absolutely incredible to watch these girls, just, again, the empowerment. So those were one of those moments where you saw in their eyes, like, look at how much power I have because of all of this knowledge that I can bring to the table. Like, hey, yeah, one girl brought up a prepayment penalty fee, so she knows that she's trying to get the money for the bank. I mean, it was absolutely fun, and it was just incredible to be able to see how much fun the girls had with it. But also, again, what I tell some people is, like, we don't need 5-month-long programs. If you teach it the right way and it's accessible enough, really, these girls were in the program for all of 15 hours and were able to walk out of there speaking more eloquently than some bankers that you could just go to a branch to.
And it's not just that, it's the fact that they're in 3rd and 8th grade. So the impact you have at that age is phenomenal.
Exactly.
And if you think about it, 15 hours, it's how many quarters? How many school quarters? I mean, yeah, so it's a lot of education packed in those 15 hours, if you think about it. And for you to do, for them to have to do a performance report at the end, that's how they really solidify what they've learned. And it's phenomenal. So thumbs up, totally thumbs up on that one. And is this like the final stage for you, or do you have a high school and college education platform?
Yeah, absolutely not. Our thing is to build and sustain. So we're building. We have high school programs as well, which we usually integrate ourselves with the college readiness programs at different educational institutions. We have something called meetups, which is a huge hit among the high school girls just because they love to kind of, basically you pick up to 7 of your best friends. We order you food. We sit down with you and we just talk finance, but it's very casual. So it's outside of the classroom setting. So girls just feel like you're just kicking it with your friends. But at the same time, I'm like totally getting the knowledge that I need to feel like, I can be wealthy. And then from there, we have college programs, which basically continue to make our curriculum more and more sophisticated, but then really prepare them for the somewhat daunting task for some about, okay, now my loans are about to hit, my deferment period's about to be over. How can I build wealth, but simultaneously be in, an incredible amount of debt? What do I do with that? Thinking about insurance options. So really, again, kicking it up a notch, thinking about retirement planning and other financial planning needs and starting investment accounts, where to allocate some things for my 401k stuff. And then we require that parents come to all of our programs. So we even call those adult programs because we've noticed that even though kind of what you said, this underwhelming resources that we have for adults in these communities. And I actually have noticed that it's worse than even I anticipated. So I've had a number of parents tell me they didn't even know that they had a credit score until their daughter went through our program and they read some of our curriculum. And so it's bittersweet to hear that. Like, thank God we're helping them.
Yes.
But equally, it is shocking to me that somehow our system has failed so many people for so long that these women have no idea that they actually had a credit report. And imagine what that makes them feel like when they're like, okay, well, how do I get out of this hole so I can build credit and then be able to leverage having good credit and what that means in terms of building wealth. And so we have to require that parents come as well, because that deals with that intergenerational piece, to make sure that, again, wealth is attainable for everybody that comes to us.
Absolutely. And the biggest part of what I like about what you do is the fact that it's heavy education. It's at every level, and you start so early with education, and without it, we're never going to balance the scales out. We're never going to balance the scales out. So
exactly,
please keep doing what you're doing. And and I like the fact that you're also layering everything. So you're not dumping all that information on a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old. You're slowly building them, building the systems based on their level of understanding and what they can absorb at that age, and what they can actually do at that age with their allowance money, because that's all they have at that point.
Exactly.
A 5th grader or an 8th grader might have a job at that point, might, deliver newspapers or whatever, but they might have a job at that point. They might have access to their own money. So it's a different type of education, a different type of course that you're teaching. So it's fantastic. And the fact that you kicking in insurance and all the adult things for high school and college, that's important. That's super important. And the parents coming in, you can teach the child as much as you want to, but if the parent is not involved in the child's financial future, might as well give it up. So
exactly.
Yeah, great job with that one. Absolutely, I'm totally in love with what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So what are you most proud of out of all the programs? Do you have any specific one that you like the best, or do you like them all because they're all amazing?
I do like them all. So I've had a lot of questions. I was up at my alma mater, Amherst College, this weekend for a program that we implemented on campus. And some people were like, I think for me, what I'm most proud of is when I see the students that we teach or the people that we serve, kind of those aha moments. And for me, when I see somebody, you can see when somebody feels confident. Like at first, I think they realize, oh my gosh, there are so many things that I don't know. But by the end of our program, by the end of that 90-minute or 2-hour period, they're like, yeah, I actually feel like I can do this. And that makes me feel like what we have here is magical. It's incredibly unfortunate that we haven't had this sooner. However, to know that we're doing it now and we're doing it right just makes it feel like something magical is happening. And I'm just so excited for the future. But I would say that our impact numbers, I think, is what I'm most proud of, is that despite the fact that we have, girls coming from failing schools, I'll be honest with you, a lot of the schools that they belong to are failing. And so we have to kind of accommodate that when they come into our programs on how we can make it even more accessible. I'm incredibly proud of the fact that our curriculum is even accessible to those students who have special needs. We're not going to turn anybody away. And for me to know that we still have a 98% successful financial literacy rate is huge for me. And honestly, the 1 or 2% who don't necessarily make it there, we kind of put into a bucket called financial competence, that they know what's going on, but they maybe have made a couple mistakes there. But what we do is we then provide them with one-on-one sessions to make sure that we can get there. And so to have such a high number, even for our kindergarteners, and the way that we kind of assess their impact numbers is we have them draw compound interest. And to be able to see a 4-year-old actually draw it out, and some of the things are more brilliant than I could even come up with, really just makes it, again, feel like this is something that is so necessary. But even beyond that, it is really just magic. Just very proud of that and the team that has kind of helped me put together this curriculum.
Got it. And how many girls have been through your program at any level? Girls and parents as well. Let's include them in there as well, because the numbers are important at this point. How many people are you actually reaching right now? Absolutely.
So the numbers that you'll see on our website are just the girls themselves. So just this summer alone, we helped over 250 girls. Because we require one parent attend or guardian, so that number would just double there. So it's almost 500 people that we helped since June, from a June to August timeline. So
that's a lot of sessions.
Exactly. Our impact is really important to us, and the fact that we can help that, such a large number of people in such a short period of time, again, is a testament to that these communities want this, but they also need this.
And one other question on this one, what are the demographics on the people you're helping specifically?
Absolutely. So 98% of the families that we help fall below the low income socioeconomic status according to the federal standard. Mm-hmm. And then about 60% of the families that we have served fall below the poverty line. So again, knowing that we are serving a demographic that absolutely needs this because they are so under-resourced is really important to us.
Right. And where else would they get this information? Would they even know about this information?
Exactly.
Great job there.
Thank you.
All right. So we've talked about what you're most proud of, and I'm so happy with that. But what drives you? What is your inspiration for all this? How did you come to do this? You could have done anything else. You could have
Yeah.
continued to be, working in brokerage, and you'd have done great. Why are you doing this? Why is this so important to you?
I think you kind of nailed it earlier, is that I don't want to say maybe I was destined to do this, even though I do feel that way. But I feel like a big part of BlackFem is just who I am. And serving is something that I've known I've always wanted to do. So what drives me is knowing that I get to go to work. It's funny that this is work even, and know that I'm making an impact. That's something that I've even felt since I was in high school. But one of my mentors said something incredibly profound to me, that what he does is he likes to say, if I'm doing what I love, then I'm approaching it in a way that makes me feel full. And that was so profound to me. And that's what drives me, is knowing that I'm full. I feel so full of joy. I still feel so full of support, even from these families that thank me for coming up with an idea like this. But I mutually am thankful for them for knowing that they can trust in us as kind of a financial institution, because that's hard for these people in communities of color. I mean, I'm even thinking of a story. 4 weeks prior to the Wall Street Journal article, one of our moms came to us and we found out that she was a part of the Wells Fargo scandal. So it's a big deal that our curriculum allowed her to kind of figure that out, just because we have a whole section on banking fees and how to budget for those. And she found that out. And so it drives me that I get to feel full every day. And again, this whole idea of like feeling like there's some magic happening. And even then it's a community-based effort. So where we get even our girls is coming from the fact of like, girls come through our programs and then they want us to come to their cheerleading teams, and then their parents talk to their friends, and it's been really word of mouth. So I think we do an okay job of marketing, but I'd actually say that it's the parents who have been kind of really our marketing ambassadors, that have really driven the numbers.
That's fantastic. We'll talk a little bit more about how you raise your funds, how do you, just a little bit later. But I have to have a question right now for you about specifically, how do we bring more women into finance? How do we bring more women into business? And do you think that education is as important financially to understand how to master your money so you can actually get into the business world? Is that what you're trying to do?
Yeah. So I had a question like this the other day when I was at Amherst, and I think education is really important. But the one thing that I want people to understand is you don't have to go be, a finance major or something to feel like you can break into the business world. I think for me, it's really understanding that, like, if you have enough confidence and know that there's a problem, you've done enough research to say, you know what, there is a need for this and I'm just going to go for it. I think it's that. And so again, knowing that we need resources and institutions to empower us to do so, I think is actually the bigger problem other than education. So I think education is incredibly important, but I think having the forthright to understand that, like, we need to empower people to get into these businesses, and what that looks like, I'll be completely honest, and if I get in trouble later on, but so at JP Morgan, I got to help with the recruiting process while I was an analyst. Mm-hmm. And to be honest with you, if I'm being very serious, I put women's resumes at the top. I think that getting people to break in requires that other people believe that they need to break in. And so I'd interview those people first, because I felt as though if you already are a minority statistic, then you should have more support to get in where you want to get in. And so I think that that's also really important too, is understanding that missions need to, be a big foundation of how we act. And the mission being like, okay, we need to break more women into these businesses because we're incredibly smart people. I mean, come on.
We're half the planet.
Exactly. And not only that, but like, it's just unbelievable some of how dumb people really sound. Thinking about like how we can continue to submerge people into it's just all types of stupid, to be honest with you. I mean, there's no other way of saying it. It's just very general that we need people to understand that when we bring women into spaces and places that they aren't there, things are going to get better. They'll never fall apart. That's our job. we run shit. That's just what happens.
We run the world. That's what
Exactly.
it's called. Yeah. And I want to actually talk a little bit about what you said. It's easier to have a woman in a position within a company to bring in more women.
Yes.
I agree with you on that, and I'm not the only one that agrees with you on that. I did an interview with Erica Baker. You can listen to it on the podcast later. And that's one of the reasons that's one of the things that she actually said. She asked all of women in tech, all of Black women in tech specifically, to send her their resumes.
Yes.
Because it's a lot easier to give access once somebody's already in, and how almost impossible it is to break into a company where there's no men, no women. I'm sorry, no women,
exactly.
in not even leadership, but within the company. Because and talking with every businesswoman that I've talked to for the last 6 years, if not longer, women change the corporate culture. We improve it. Companies that have women in leadership are better viewed by their consumers and their customers, and the corporate philosophy changes and the mission changes to a more of inclusionary philosophy. To put it lightly, it's more team-based, it's more teamwork, it's more we're all in it together, and offering education at a low level, not a low level, at a early stage in life about how to grow financially and how to actually be okay financially as you grow up. It's important. It's super important, because without that, you're never going to actually make it into the business world, because you're not going to be able to get a business job because you need to be worried about everything else.
Exactly.
So what you do is fantastic. I think what you're layering on early on, and then continue to layer on with every stage of your program that you're doing, helps do that. So yeah, keep doing that, definitely, for sure. So
thank you so much.
What's coming up for BlackFemInc? What are you guys doing next?
Absolutely. So our Money Does Grow on Trees ebook will launch in early November, and then the actual hard copy will be out at the beginning of 2017. So definitely look out for that. It's going to be a great book to give to kids or gift to nephews, nieces, grandchildren. I think equally we are looking to scale. So November 1st, we are actually expanding out to California. So that will make us a part of the scene in Massachusetts, New York, DC, Maryland, and now California. And so I think our big hope is that by the end of next year, we will have served 5,000 new girls. So in addition to those that we have 100% retention, which is fantastic. So every program that we ask families to come back, they do. 100% have come back, and we're hoping to help 5,000 new girls and women.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit about funding. We haven't talked about funding at all. How do you guys get your money? You said you're a nonprofit, so who's donating and how are you getting to that?
That's a great question. So what I decided very early on, I'll say probably like as a week-old organization, I said, you know what, I'm going to run this like a for-profit. And so we actually get a lot of our funding from private donors. And so we kind of call those angel investments, except we don't have to pay them back, which is fantastic.
That is amazing. For every startup out there can vouch for that.
Exactly. So that's fantastic. And it's really just getting, let's be real, your kind of rich colleagues, friends, people that you know to buy into your mission. And then from there, the institutions that we partner with, they pay for our programs, and those the funds that we raise from those partnerships actually will fund the in-house, as we call them, our in-house programs. So for example, tomorrow we are doing an intro to investing workshop for 3rd to 8th graders, and so some of our partnerships where we've had institutions like Amherst College or Smith College who have come to us and wanted to bring our programs to their campuses. So the money that we raise there will actually go towards paying our other programs. And then we've kind of adopted Bernie Sanders' fundraising platform, where we also ask that, other friends or family members, or even families who've gone through our programs, to donate $20 a month. And what we've done is we've asked them to be recurring donors. So in a way, we're teaching them financial literacy again, because as you donate $20 a month over a 12-month period, you can then get a huge tax write-off at the end of the year. And so thinking about taxes ahead of time, but you're also allowing these $20 this will actually pay for one girl's 529 college savings plan, which actually each girl that graduates from our Time is Money program receives one of these 529s. And so having a recurring donor, you're actually paying for a new 529 savings plan each time they make a donation each month.
Awesome. And like at the end of the conversation, what is it that I haven't asked? Is there something in the program or something that you think it's important that everybody knows about that I haven't asked? And let's talk about that.
Sure. I think the big thing that I'm getting more and more questions about is where our name came from. So some of it's kind of rooted in, I guess it's a joke because people usually laugh when I bring it up. So I guess I'll call it a joke. And then it's rooted in something very profound to me. So when I started this organization, I wanted it to sound very hedge fundy. So I said, okay, well, there's BlackRock and there's Blackstone, so BlackFem, boom, done. So that's kind of the joke part. But it's also, so Black Fem obviously comes from Black feminist. And Black feminist tradition tells us that if you liberate those at the very bottom, then you've actually liberated everybody else. And so that's why we say we target women and girls of color, because clearly the numbers don't lie, but also just the experiences don't lie, that women of color are situated at the bottom, like I said, of every single thing that exists in our society. And so if we liberate these people, then we've liberated everybody. And so that's Black feminist tradition. So I wanted to make sure people were aware of what that meant, because I sometimes get questions of like, oh, well, why don't you have programs for Black boys? And I'm saying, well, a lot of our programs, we actually are open to everybody. We don't turn people away, but our in-house programs are for the bottom of the bottom. And so I actually get to teach people who ask me those questions about Black feminist tradition, and it almost changes their mindset. Like, wow, we actually should be doing this, because if we liberate them, we liberate everybody.
I agree. And so who's your inspiration on all that?
Oh, that's a great question. I have really gotten inspired by Ella Baker, and she is kind of the unsung hero of the civil rights movement. And she did so deliberately, but it bothers me that a lot of people don't know who she is. So Ella Baker helped make SNCC a thing during the civil rights movement. And to think that we have one of, yes, Rosa Parks was fantastic, but to think we have an unsung hero who is a Black woman is dope. Shirley Chisholm,
I agree.
As well. Love Shirley Chisholm. And I think, again, just thinking about everything she did, where everybody who's kind of for Hillary should be thanking Shirley Chisholm for being the first woman to run for president, but let alone the first Black woman to run for president. Exactly. And all the things that she had to face. So I really just want to pay homage to those women of color who have just been such a beacon of hope for people like me to think like, wow, she was a badass in the 60s. I have no excuses to be a badass now. Absolutely.
And I think that the more we promote our heroes, the stronger our voices can become. So go promote them. Definitely. That's what I'm doing every day. But obviously, Ella Baker, we'll have a link with the information about her for those that don't know her and should. So, okay, so let's get a little bit more personal.
Sure.
What's your favorite book? What do you read? What do you like to gift the most?
So I'm a total weirdo, and maybe people will stop liking me after.
We love weirdos. Go for it.
So I don't like fiction. It's never been a thing that I've always read fiction books that were required for school, but Absolutely. I love nonfiction. So I would say my favorite book right now, I just finished it, is a book by Kathy O'Neill called Weapons of Math Destruction. It's a brilliant book about how the way we're starting to automate models and how that's racist and gendered. Brilliant book. And she's a total badass. And so I just love that book. I also love the book, and the author is escaping me, but it's called A Different Mirror. And A Different Mirror is a U.S. history book, but each era that is described is told from a different minority demographic. It's awesome. Brilliant. So those are definitely my two favorites. But other than that, Their Eyes Were Watching God. So I don't like fiction, but I love me some Harlem Renaissance literature. So Their Eyes Are Watching God is definitely one of my all-time favorites.
I've heard about this book from too many people, and it's on my to-do list on my to read
It's
list.
absolutely brilliant. Zora Neale Hurston, another badass woman. So one of the greatest novels I think ever written.
Awesome. Next question. These are quick and fast. What's the craziest thing about you, and what's the craziest thing that's happened to you?
That is a really funny question. I'm glad you didn't say what's the craziest thing you've ever done.
Oh, I can do that too. Let's do that too.
I would say the craziest thing about me is, and maybe I think it's the most thing that confuses people, is I am your classic bubble child. I am allergic to just about everything under the sun and have 3 autoimmune diseases. So I'm a big advocate of solving some of your personal health issues through food and kind of mind-body alignment. And so
Awesome.
I think about acupuncture and exercising, and I play soccer. I played soccer in college and in the old ladies league now, or the has-been league. I guess I'm not that old, but
You're not that old.
So, I guess the crazy thing about me is that, I am a complete bubble child, and just about anything you put in front of me, I won't be able to put into my mouth. So.
Aw, sorry about that.
That's okay. It's a way of life.
Are there next one? Are there any stories about a struggle that you want to talk about, or you just want to skip this one?
We can talk about it. So one thing that I always tell people is, I'm not ashamed of anything that I had to endure. It's actually been a source of a lot of my strength and where I've developed who I am. And so I had a very rough childhood. So I came from a very wealthy family. So we were very privileged financially, but I was abused as a child and couch rode for at different friends' houses throughout high school to kind of escape the physical abuse that I was experiencing at home. So I've been on my own since 12, and I guess I could never run for office because I'm going to admit this to the world, but I lied.
Yes, you should run for office because you're admitting this to the world.
Right. I lied on several federal forms so I could get my worker's permit before I was 14. So I lied when I was 12 and 13. I was working 3 jobs, getting straight A's, student body president, and captain of the soccer team.
And still working 3 jobs.
Exactly. So I could feed myself, and knew that education would be the way to escape the hell that I had to endure growing up. And so I think stories of struggle really should just be stories of triumph,
yes.
And finding any little piece that you can feel triumphant from. And so for me, being abused, I won't say it's the best thing that happened to me, but it's one of those things that I've come to really process and appreciate what it's done for me as how I've grown, who I claim to be, who I want to be. That's always at the forefront of my mind. And again, kind of, I think where I get this idea of like, I need to serve people, because to me, serving is healing. I get to work with somebody who's equally kind of in a rut, and that collaboration feeds me, and it also makes me feel like I can heal.
And also your fight for financial independence for yourself and for others.
Exactly.
It's coming from, it could be coming from that as well. So,
absolutely.
There's trials and tribulations through life, and sometimes they put us on a path that we didn't think we're gonna be on, but it's really good for us and for society. So failure is not failure if you get up and learn from it. So
yes, preach on it.
The last question, and I swear we're done. I know you gotta go, but if you have a billboard, if you have access to the billboard and you can just put whatever message you want to put on it, where would you put it first of all, and what would it be on it?
I'd put it in Times Square just so I know so many people go through it. And what would it say? It would be something along the lines of a call to action for all girls of color who feel as though they would like to buy into the bullshit that's said to them not to. So, to be honest with you, my favorite saying, and it maybe is somewhat irrelevant, but my favorite saying is shed 2 tears in a bucket, and if it don't fill it, fuck it. So For me, it's really, to all the people out there who feel like they can't make it, you can. And so you can cry for a little bit, but then, pull yourself up because you're stronger than you think you are and you're beautiful. And that's it.
We're going to end on that because you can't end it any better than that. Chloe, thank you so very much for doing this podcast with me today, and thank you for your time and your candor, and I really wish you the best of luck with the BlackFemInc, and I know you gotta go, but before you do, how can my audience get in touch with you? Because your message needs to be out there, and I'm sure our audience is going to want to say, hey, come do this program at my school, or come do this program at my kid's school. So how can they get in touch with you?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. Hitting up our website, blackfem.org, would be the great place to start. Following us on social media. So BlackFemInc is our Instagram handle, and also where you can find us on Facebook. Black_fem is our Twitter. And then from there, please feel free to add me on LinkedIn, Chloe McKenzie. And I'm happy. I'd love to speak with anybody who's willing to speak to me.
Fantastic. We'll have all of that information posted below the podcast today. And please reach out to her. It's, obviously you've heard her passion and you've heard what she's trying to do. So support her and support BlackFemInc. And with this, we're going to finish off for today. And I want to thank our listeners for tuning in and invite everybody to engage with us on our website at thebusinessmagazineforwomen.com. That's it. This is Monica and Tohi, your host for today, signing off. And thanks, Chloe, again. And see you all next time.